Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Orange Brown Talk podcast. Dan Labbe, Mary Kay Cabot, Ashley Bastock with you recording this. It's about 8:30 on Tuesday night. Tuesday, right? I keep losing track of my days. So 8:30 on Tuesday night, and it has been an eventful evening on the Browns coaching search regarding former Browns coaches, all sorts of stuff going on here. So recording a little bit later tonight. And so we will start with the latest developments in the coaching search. Obviously, Todd Monken interviewed today for the Browns job on Tuesday. But Mary Kay, the big news is Mike McDaniel, who is scheduled to come in on Wednesday, will not be interviewing for the Browns. Now, this has some pretty far-reaching implications, right? Obviously, Mike was a guy that they have been linked to going back to before they even fired Kevin Stefanski. You wrote in a story this week that he's a guy that the Browns still really like. So obviously, he's someone, and they were having him in for a second interview. So obviously, he's someone they were considering. But the other part of this is this makes the Rooney Rule a little more complicated because this was setting up where he would have been their first in-person interview. Nate Scheelhaase could have been their second in-person interview next Monday. Now they're going to have to figure that part of it out before they can hire someone. So a lot of ramifications here with Mike McDaniel pulling out of this job.
Yes, absolutely 100%. And I don't know what they're going to do yet about the Rooney Rule. They do have a day off tomorrow, but they can't very well just call somebody up last minute and say, hey, why don't you come in and interview? Because that's not in the spirit of the Rooney Rule. They really have to go find a candidate that they really like, are really interested in, and interview that candidate. But it seems to me that Mike McDaniel probably just realized either he was not going to be in line to actually get this job, or he's got other opportunities that he likes better. He's interviewing for the Ravens job, the Raiders job, and then he's got a couple of coordinator opportunities, both with the Titans and with the Chargers. So I just think that he probably looked at this situation and thought, maybe there are some other things that would be better for me, or maybe the Browns kind of let him know, or maybe let his agent know that he wasn't in their perhaps top 2 or 3. Not really sure exactly what happened here or what went down. It's all coming at us pretty quickly today, but nevertheless, he's out. He was one of 2 former NFL head coaches still in the race. The other one is Jim Schwartz. So now they only have one former head coach in Schwartz, and then they've got a coordinator, a former coordinator, current coordinators. But he was definitely one of the most experienced guys that was still on the list.
Yeah, and Ashley, it's interesting because, we talked a little bit about Mike McDaniel. And again, maybe to Mary Kay's point, he found out that he wasn't going to have a legitimate shot to get the job or something like that. But I think also this speaks to this idea of, for a guy like that who's looking for his second opportunity, and you usually don't get a third opportunity at these jobs, this might be a difficult situation where he might look at it and say, I'm better off going and being a coordinator somewhere. Now, obviously, look, if he gets the Baltimore job or if he throws his hat into the ring in the Buffalo job, however that goes, I mean, those are certainly more appealing jobs no matter what. But I do think this speaks a little bit to how this could be a hard sell for some candidates if they have options and if they feel like they could maybe go be a coordinator for a year, or in the case of some of these young guys, stay a coordinator for a year and kind of move forward from there. So I don't want to read too much into this, within a few hours of him pulling his hat out of the ring. But I do think it matters that Mike McDaniel kind of said no thanks when, less than 24 hours before his interview.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about him wondering, is he going to be this sort of canary in the coal mine for this job? And especially with particularly these other younger guys who are going to be coming in later this week in Grant Udinski and in Nate Scheelhaase. That to me is the biggest question, because how we've talked about them, right, is obviously they have very bright futures. People expect them to be head coaches at some point. So when they're both young guys, Nate Scheelhaase hasn't even been a coordinator yet. Grant Udinski, obviously only 1 year being an offensive coordinator. He hasn't called plays yet. That it does make you wonder, are these guys going to look at this situation, look at this quarterback situation and be like, I don't know if I can work much with this. And do I want to come to a place and become a head coach before I'm ready, and then it kind of sends my career in one direction. Like, that to me is the fascinating part of all of this. Like, maybe that's not the case. Like, maybe Mike McDaniel had plenty of valid reasons, or jobs he just likes better and he wanted to pull himself out of here. But the reality is, even if he had jobs he just likes better, it's a problem for the Browns that they were at one of those jobs. And truthfully, it to me all comes back to the quarterback when you're talking about an offensive head coach.
Yeah, and that was always going to be the issue, I think, with this job. Once they got that number 6 pick, once Dante Moore didn't come out in the draft, and their options kind of thinned there. There isn't an obvious answer inside that building right now. They can certainly give Deshaun Watson a longer look. They can certainly give Shador Sanders or Dylan Gabriel. Like, they have guys that they can give longer looks, but there's no obvious this is the future answer in that building. And so, Mary Kay, I think that does make this job, especially for a guy like Mike McDaniel, I think it can make this job a difficult sell if you're coming in here and you just aren't sure who's going to be at quarterback. And so for the Browns now, they just kind of have to hope that one of these young guys, if that's who they ultimately want, whether it's Udinsky or Shieldhouse, that they're willing to kind of go along with whatever that quarterback plan is this year until the Browns can find that long-term option.
Right. Either that or, we don't know what went on behind the scenes. It's very difficult to get details of how these things went down. Again, we don't know if Mike looked at this and said, this isn't for me, or if he got a sense from the Browns that they were going in another direction. So he may have wanted this job and may have thought that he could work with the quarterbacks that they have, and might have gotten some sense from then. I mean, maybe with the situation that he's in and having worked here before and having a good relationship with Andrew Berry, who's going to shoot these candidates straight. I mean, he is going to do that. You don't want to burn bridges in any kind of a situation like this, because you want to maintain good relationships with coaches, with players, with agents. And I think Andrew Berry works very, very hard to do that. So if they came to him and said, does he really have a shot, or might he be best served by going off and pursuing these other opportunities? I think Andrew would probably be honest with him about that. If he was number 6 on the list or whatever the case may be, and had a long way to go and long on ramp up to the number 1 spot, I don't really know. It's hard to say. Or maybe Mike McDaniel looked at this and said, I'm not going to be able to do this with these quarterbacks. We don't know if Deshaun Watson is going to stay healthy. We don't know if Shador Sanders is going to be able to become a quality NFL starter over the course of a season. So we don't really know yet what happened with it. But I do know that there are some candidates, whether they ended up interviewing or not, who had some consternation about the Browns quarterback situation. And how could you not? Any coach is going to be successful or not, depending on who his quarterback is. And this situation, as we all know right now in this moment, is very, very murky and uncertain.
Yeah, and yes, exactly. That's it. How can you, as a coach, look at this and be super confident in the way this quarterback room looks? And I think the other part of this too is, and again, this can happen sort of in that moment. I think, if you're following on Brown's Twitter, or if you're following along with what people are saying about this search, it just kind of continues to give this a little more of a chaotic feel than maybe we expected. And part of that is Andrew has been very deliberate. He has been very, he's certainly taking his time. It seems like they're going to wait out Nathan Shieldhouse, which I think is probably significant, that they want to have that in-person interview with him on Monday. And I understand that, Ashley, because this organization hasn't earned that benefit of the doubt. So when it starts to feel when something like this happens for a reason we don't know, it can just add to things feeling a little bit messy. And so I guess the positive spin on this would be what Andrew needs to do now is just make sure that he sticks to his process and gets his guy, whoever that is.
Yeah, exactly. And I think for Browns fans too, who look at this and the messiness of it in particular, I think it's only Tuesday, but this week, like, the major developments we've seen across the league, right, already have them a little bit antsy mainly because of McDermott getting let go in Buffalo. Like the issue is automatically, or would they try to throw their hat in the ring for him? I know I've seen some fans, it seems like very antsy for the Browns to make that a possibility. But there's also the element of the Buffalo job is obviously like the most desirable one right now because that head coach is going to get to coach Josh Allen. So, I'm very curious to see if we see Mike McDaniel ultimately in the running for that. Even like there's a lot that is still at play and a lot of moving parts. And with every development, even not just among the Browns coaching search, it seems like Browns Twitter is hypothesizing and speculating. And are they going to go try to get this guy and make a push for that guy? Or is this job opening going to impact them? So I think it's kind of all these things together sort of causing some consternation. And then like the other piece of it is fans not understanding the stipulations of the Rooney Rule, and that when it's a head coach job, these candidates, which it in the NFL operations guide, which we obviously looked up the language and stuff and had discussions about it, two minority and or women candidates must be interviewed in person, not virtual. These virtual interviews that they've done with Mike McDaniel and Nate Shieldhouse do not satisfy that rule. So there's also a lot of arguing about that going on, but how we have just described it here is what the rule actually is.
Yeah, and so that's the other part of this that kind of adds to this, like him pulling his name out makes it feel a little more chaotic because Mary Kay, I do think it's fair to wonder why they didn't have him in for an in-person interview the first time. Why they kept that virtual, because they could have had him in for an in-person and he was doing in-person interviews. And so that's the one thing that I'm kind of stuck on is like if you really were interested in him, you could have saved yourself some trouble and tried to have him into your building. And again, I go back to this idea of, we did a video and probably at least a podcast segment on the fact that his name was linked to the Browns towards the end of the season. And like I said, you've written about their interest in Mike McDaniel. So obviously there was an interest in him to some degree. So I think that's maybe the mistake in all of this is they probably should have tried to have him in their building for an in-person interview. And then they wouldn't be kind of stuck in this situation where, they're still going through this process of interviewing two people. And right now they only have one on the list who would help them satisfy that Rooney Rule.
Right. I don't know why they didn't do that in person. Originally, I wrote that they did do it in person because I thought they did. And I didn't find out until a couple of days ago, or it's all running together now. But that was a virtual interview. Why would you do that when you know you have to satisfy the Rooney Rule? You would be one down on that right now. And it was somebody they really liked. So once again, they're not trying to just, not take the Rooney Rule seriously. He would have been a viable candidate and they could have checked off that one box. Now they still have two to go. And it gets a little dicey because from the way that we all understand it, now they've got to go either find another candidate to give a first interview to, or perhaps they give then a second in-person interview to like add and dirty or something. You know what I mean? Like, I don't really know exactly what the situation would be with that. And I don't even know 100% for sure. I know that Mike McDaniel was biracial and that counts as a minority. But, we don't even really 100% know exactly what constitutes a minority. So that gets a little bit dicey there too. But now, I mean, it might be a little awkward to go find your second Rooney Rule man or woman, right? I mean, that feels awkward.
Well, yeah, because they're in, and look, I mean, I think to be fair, we see teams do this, we see them bring people in to interview them and you kind of know that person's not going to get that job, but they try to satisfy the rule. So there are teams that kind of play it a little fast and loose in that regard. But yeah, I mean, this just makes it more complicated. Like you can't move on a candidate right now if you wanted to, whether it's Udinsky or whether it's Shieldhouse or, whoever it might be. It just makes it more complicated, right?
Yeah, unless there's something that we don't know that it has already happened or is already
Right.
happening. There could be something that we don't know. Um, you know, I don't know what that would be. I have tried to ask the Browns, what are you going to do now about the Rooney Rule? And I have not gotten an answer back on that yet. So I guess we'll just have to let this play out a little bit. Maybe we'll hear something soon about a new candidate surfacing, or maybe we'll hear something about how they satisfy the Rooney Rule. I don't really know. I don't know. But it seems to me that now, with the way things are going and set up, that they pretty much have to go through with their interview with Nate Scheelhaus on Monday. There was part of me that thought, well, if things went well with a candidate this week, that they could go ahead and make a hire, but now they can't, or at least not right now. They can't at this moment. I thought, what if they really
Yeah.
love Grant Udinski and he comes in on Friday and maybe they would be ready to go with their hire. But unless they get 2 Rooneys done before that, that can't happen. So maybe they've got a plan that we don't know about. They play it very close to the vest. I'm sure that they're going to try to make sure that this situation works out fine for them.
Well, it looks like McDaniel is going to become the Chargers OC. That's the
I
plan
saw
here
that.
for him. Yeah, that just came across.
Yeah.
Again, that kind of goes back to what we talked about, though, Ashley. Mike McDaniel viewing that OC job
Yeah.
as more appealing than potentially the Browns job, and that, of course, is assuming that the Browns did not just come out and say, "Hey, you're out," which might have happened. But
Yeah.
if it was up to Mike McDaniel, this is him choosing an OC job over a potential head coach job.
Mhm.
I am very fascinated to see how those discussions between Jim Harbaugh and Mike McDaniel are going to go. I mean, my gosh, I genuinely don't even have words. I'm actually like, I don't know. I guess obviously the possibility of working with Justin Herbert is probably alluring. Obviously, you're gonna have to fix that offensive line more than anything. But I don't know how those two personalities are gonna clash. I heard like work together. I'm worried they're going to clash. So that's fascinating me. But yeah, I mean, if this was like a Mike McDaniel decision, this is like bad news for the Browns, in my opinion, because it tells you, again, we're all talking hypothetically, but it tells you what people view of this job or how they are viewing this job. And I do wonder if it's going to have impact. Like I said, I mean, I wonder if it's going to have any impact with these younger guys, if we're going to see any other people pull their names out of consideration for this job. And it's fascinating. And when we talk about the offense needing fixed, and I know a lot of people are really interested in like Grant Udinski or Shieldhouse to a lesser extent. I think people have really latched on to Grant Udinski in that 3-minute clip of him talking about zone coverages and stuff that we've referenced before. But people saying why would you go with the defensive guy over somebody like this when the offense is what needs help? Well, like in theory, like a possibility of how you end up with Jim Schwartz or even one of these different defensive names is if offensive head coaches and play callers don't want this job too. Like that could be ultimately like what happens. And I'm really curious at the end of the day, like what's going to leak out, what we're going to hear. We always talk about the combines coming up, like what's going to leak out there. It's all very, very interesting. But if this was a fully Mike McDaniel decision to view that OC job as better than the Browns, kind of like speaks to all the problems we've been talking about since the season ended.
It just hit me. We have to have Hard Knocks with the Chargers. Didn't they do? I think they did
Oh
Hard
my
Knocks a
God,
couple
we have
recently,
to.
but yeah, that we've got to have Hard Knocks with the Chargers.
Well, that wasn't a true Chargers Hard Knocks. Remember, that was the weird COVID year, and it
Okay.
was both the Chargers and the Rams. So they didn't even get their own Hard Knocks because
Okay.
it was
Well,
when
then, yeah,
SoFi opened, and they wanted to show that off.
I'm not up on the Hard Knocks rules anymore, but if we can get the Chargers on Hard Knocks, we got to do it. So Mary Kay, I mean, I think there is a case, right, for these young guys to take a chance on a guy like a Udinski or a Shieldhouse, or because you kind of know what the deal is next year. You're going to put a lot into this offense. It's probably going to be a very young offense, so there's going to be some growing pains just across the board. And if you bring in a young coach, that includes with him. But I think that's okay if you get a guy you believe in and you get a guy that shows you, at least over the course of next season, that I can build this offense and I can take it the direction we want to go. And if we could just figure out quarterback, this team can get to winning very, very quickly. I don't think there's anything wrong with that thinking. It's just you got to make sure you get the right guy.
Right. And what we're forgetting about in all of this is that the Browns could still very well hire Jim Schwartz as their head coach. And then
or Todd Monken, who they just interviewed today.
Or Todd Monken, who did the interview today, the second interview today. And for whatever reason, I don't know why that one sort of stumps me a little bit, right? It just stumps me a little bit because I don't know why. I just would not have thought about him per se, just from him being here in 2019. It was just, it didn't go that well, not because it was his fault at all. It was just a weird year to be here at all under Freddie Kitchens. And I did not, I guess, realize that they viewed him in that light. But I certainly enjoyed covering him. He is certainly an amazing offensive coordinator. I just didn't see that one coming. It's not that he doesn't deserve it or wouldn't deserve it. I just did not. I saw Mike McDaniel coming. I saw that one coming a mile away. I knew that they would toss their hat into the ring for John Harbaugh. I know that they're at least going to inquire about Sean McDermott. But I did not see the Todd Monken thing coming. So maybe that'll come out of left field and they will hire Todd Monken as their head coach. I mean, it could happen. But Jim Schwartz is still very much in the mix. He's still very much in the mix. And who knows? I don't know. I don't know if it could be a combination of Jim and Todd somehow, or if they're going to go with, just throw caution to the wind and hire one of these really young guys that isn't necessarily ready for the opportunity yet, but might surprise everyone. It almost feels to me like Andrew would want to lean more towards one of the younger guys, but I can't say that for sure. I cannot say that for sure. I really don't know. I mean, I do think that any one of these guys at any moment over the next week or so can be named their head coach.
Yeah, and I do think I think you're right. I think Andrew kind of takes pride in this, in like finding people. I mean, we've seen it in the front office. He takes pride in trying to find people and uncover people and give them opportunities that they might not have had otherwise. So that's just something he likes to do, Ashley. And that's why, again, Grant Udinski is such an interesting candidate. That's why Nathan Scheelhaus is such an interesting candidate, because those feel like, even though we've never seen him do a coaching search before, those feel like Andrew Berry type of hires.
They really do. And I think, like, as we've gotten deeper into this process, I mean, entering the third week or whatever it is here, it's like those kind of candidates, the younger offensive minds, you throw in Scheelhaus, Udinski, throw in Mike McDaniel, these guys who have broken through or are on their way to breaking through a bit unexpectedly. Like, that's just a majority of their candidate pool. It just is. Like, right? They haven't gone after some of the bigger defensive names the way other teams with openings have. And I keep coming back to that Andrew quote about our candidate list might look a little different than other teams. They were in the Brian Flores sweepstakes, or they didn't go after Robert Saleh, like that we know of, right? They didn't make big pushes for those people that are getting a lot of interest. Like, those are both defensive head coaches. So it's not surprising. And like, the fact that there is a majority of their candidates are these younger offensive minded people, it like makes me wonder if that's what they really want.
Okay, let's take a detour from this coaching search here before we wrap up the podcast. So, after the Mike McDaniel news happened, former Browns quarterback Baker Mayfield, who I will just point out here in his Twitter profile, says, let go and let God. Okay, let's just remember the let go part specifically. Let's go back to January 7th, when he tweeted out a video that said focused on the work, not the noise. Okay, that's fine. So Kevin Stefanski is now the head coach in Atlanta. And D. Orlando Ledbetter, who actually has been on this podcast before, wrote a tweeted out about Kevin Stefanski having a dumpster fire at quarterback in Cleveland. Baker Mayfield and Deshaun Watson failed, which started a chain reaction to 11 other starters. QB Shador Sanders closed out last season with 7 starts. Baker Mayfield quotes this tweet and says, "Failed is quite the reach, pal. Still waiting on a text call from him, Stefanski, after I got shipped off like a piece of garbage. Can't wait to see you twice a year, coach." So Mary Kay, Baker Mayfield, well, look, it was one of the first thoughts I had when Kevin took that Atlanta job is he's going against the Bucs twice a year. Assuming Baker Mayfield is still there, that means going against Baker Mayfield twice a year. So that spices that up a little bit. And now this tweet, I'm sure Roger Goodell and the folks at the NFL and the folks who are going to get to broadcast that game whenever it is, both those games whenever it is, we're thrilled to see that tweet from our old buddy Baker Mayfield, who we all were kind of talking about this a little bit back in 2021, even before the Browns ever visited with Deshaun Watson. You were reporting on this fracture between Baker and Kevin Stefanski that we all kind of were seeing play out in real time.
Let's take a trip down clickbait lane, shall we? Yes. So in 2021, I wrote a long story about the things that basically were going wrong between Baker Mayfield and Kevin Stefanski, and why Baker Mayfield was dismayed about how things were going in 2021, play calling situations, and you name it. I chronicled it all in a story. It was a pretty lengthy story and pretty detailed on the things that were going wrong between Baker and Kevin. And I stated in that story that if things didn't resolve and these two guys didn't patch things up and get their act together, that there was a world in which Baker Mayfield might consider asking to be traded. Well, that part of the story got aggregated and blown up by people. Baker Mayfield might ask to be traded. And I was told that Baker never even read the story, okay? Because if he had read it, and he should go back and read it right now. If he needs a login, we'll help him out. But if he goes back and he reads the story right now, he would see that it was pretty even in terms of, it was not an anti-Baker story by any stretch of the imagination. I laid out all the things that were going wrong offensively that year, all the extenuating circumstances, all the injuries, all of the problems on the receiving core. And I don't think he would have a problem with that story. But lo and behold, he tweeted clickbait about the story. And Ashley, do you have it up? What is you sent me that.
Yeah, let me pull it up because, okay, so some background, we see this tweet and we're like, is this actually Baker? And I'm like, well, I'm following the account. All these other people that I trust are following the account. How can we verify it? And I'm like, I know I'm going to do an advanced search for the word clickbait on his account. And this is the tweet I remember. So the original tweet that Baker quote tweeted Mary Kay's story with said, clickbait, you and many other Cleveland local media continue to be drama-stirring reporters with no sources or facts. Don't put words in my mouth so you can put food on your table. I am not your puppet, was the full tweet. Back in 2021 or 2022.
Can we take a detour here to remind everyone what your son Chris said?
Oh, this is my favorite part
about that tweet.
Now, my son Chris, who is the same age as Baker, he tweeted, I believe he tweeted it, Baker, I've got news for you. My mom hasn't put food on the table in 25 years. So we have had ourselves a field day with that quote in the Cabot Merman household, because, that was just a very, very funny comeback by Christopher, and I loved it. But yeah, so I had the wrath of Twitter rained down upon me because of my clickbait story. But once again, it was a very well-sourced story, And if anybody gets a chance to go back and read it, I have a link to it in my, I may have tweeted out the link separately today. So that's
you did. Yes.
Okay. That's on my Twitter feed. Ashley was kind enough to go find the story for me because I was up to my eyeballs in 3 different stories going on at the time. And so she went and found that story for me and the tweets and all of that, because she is really good at doing that, by the way, finding things and keeping things organized, keeping us organized. And so go back and read that on my Twitter feed. And it's also in the story that I posted. And I gave a little bit of background in there, but absolutely 100%. These two had major beef in 2021. And it kind of was bubbling under the surface most of the season, bubbling under the surface. But it really came to a head finally, ultimately, in the second last game of the season when Baker was sacked 9 times. And he called Kevin out for not providing James Hudson III, the backup right tackle who played in place of Jack Conklin that game, for not providing him with any chipping help. And TJ Watt ended up getting 4 sacks and tying the NFL record with 22.5 that year because of those 4 sacks. And then also went on to win NFL Defensive Player of the Year that year, I think, or maybe he got that the year before. I'll have to look that up.
I can't remember.
No, I think it was that
yeah.
year.
He did set the record that year. Yeah.
Yeah, it was that year. Okay, it was that year. So anyway, so a lot of things happened just even from that one game. But ultimately, this led to the Browns going out. It changed this whole thing changed the course of history for the Cleveland Browns in a very profound and dramatic way. And it did so for a bunch of other teams too, right? It did so for other teams. I mean, the Bucs history was changed because of this situation. The Browns history was changed. The Texans history was changed because of this, right? I mean, it just had an enormous ripple effect throughout the whole entire NFL. So the Browns go out, they get Deshaun Watson, doesn't work out as we all know. And then Baker gets traded to the Panthers, ends up having that amazing game for the Rams, that big comeback in the last minute against the Raiders, and ultimately gets traded. He got traded. I mean, it was a disaster of a time, a very tumultuous time. And the Browns have not recovered yet from that whole scenario from a quarterback standpoint. They have not recovered yet. And now Baker Mayfield, he wants revenge on Kevin Stefanski twice a year. He can't wait to get it. Unbelievable. Just another day at the office.
Right. And look, I get it. I mean, this is who Baker is, right? This is who Baker has been. This is why John Dorsey loved Baker.
Yes.
This is Baker at his best when he's just got that giant chip on his shoulder. But I also think it's important to remember kind of how everything went down. And you touched on a lot of it there, Mary Kay. But like, he requested a trade after he found out the Browns visited Deshaun Watson.
Yep.
Like, didn't even, right? And then,
yep,
obviously they trade for Deshaun and nobody wants him. Like, he didn't get traded until July. Yep. And it was for a conditional 5th, I believe.
Yep. 5th.
Yeah. So that's part of it. Then he goes to Carolina. He ends up starting there, but basically loses that job, gets released. I think it might have been a mutual parting. Like you mentioned,
he asked to be released. He went 1-5, asked to be released. And that was like such a low point in his life and career.
Has a great game in LA, really loved being with Sean McVay. But then even after that, he had to beat out Kyle Trask in Tampa. Like, he didn't go sign with Tampa to be the starter. He had to win a quarterback competition that went pretty deep into camp. So what Baker has done in Tampa, he deserves a ton of credit for it, the way he's revived his career. But, and like Kevin Stefanski probably should have sent him a text. Hey, Baker, good luck in Carolina or whatever. But, and I couldn't remember. I was looking for photos. I couldn't remember if the two interacted in that game in Carolina when the Browns and Panthers played that week 1 game. I couldn't find any photos if they did. But like, Ashley, I don't think the Browns, listen, I love to blame the Browns for things, but it's not like Baker was traded by the Browns and then became some incredible quarterback. Like, it took some time. And let's be honest, he's doing it in the worst division in football. And whatever, I could say a lot of things about where Baker is right now. Like, but good for him for becoming who he is at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue I don't think Kevin Stefanski needed to send him a text. Like, that time was so vitriolic, right? I mean, what Mary Kay outlined after that Steelers game was like, whoa, when he flat out blamed it on Kevin. Like, Kevin was probably just so like, I'm not even touching this at that point. It's not worth the trouble. And I can't really argue with that reasoning. And never mind, like, does the head coach owe you a text when you asked to be traded, like, before this Deshaun Watson thing was even finalized? So I don't know, like you guys said, I mean, this to me, this is who Baker is. It's who Baker's always going to be. He can change the outward demeanor for a little while, for spurts, but deep down, that moxie Mayfield is always who he's going to be to me. And I think we'll still get spurts like this. Again, we had to double check that this was really him today, but it is from his account, his real account.
Yeah, and it was just such a that time was so bizarre, kind of going through that season. Of course, that was still, we weren't in the locker room, all of that stuff. So it was just still, that was the Odell year. It was just a crazy season. And yeah, I mean, it just, him and Kevin didn't get along. It was pretty clear. Mary Kay, you kind of put it all out there for everyone to see in that story. And here we are. Now he faces Kevin Stefanski 2 years in a row. And to your point, it's just changed the fortunes of so many different teams. It just had this ripple effect because obviously Deshaun Watson was such a big part of it too.
Well, and I will say this about when Baker left. You guys probably will remember this, that he texted a farewell text to Myles Garrett, and Myles Garrett told
yeah,
me,
you're right.
right? Myles Garrett told me in a one-on-one interview, one of those training camp preseason interviews that we do. Some of us get a chance to do with Myles. He had told me that he didn't return Baker's text, and I sort of understood that one too, because Baker had fired some shots over the years at Myles. One of the first ones, and I've written about this, one of the first ones was when he said that he would have drafted, he was a member of the Cleveland Browns, and he said he would have drafted Patrick Mahomes at number 1 overall in 2017. And he was Miles's teammate when he said that. So that was one of the first things that happened. And then right after Helmet Gate, Baker was on national television basically saying Myles absolutely shouldn't have done that. It's unacceptable. And, I mean, people had to broker peace between the two of them. And then, I mean, because that was bad. That was a bad situation. And then there was the whole Odell Baker rift, and Myles sided with Odell. And it was just over at that point. That was in 2021 as well. So it was just, it all went wrong in 2021. And now here we are. And Kevin's gone. Baker's gone. Deshaun's still here, competing with Shedeur Sanders, and the Browns are looking for a new head coach.
I was going to say just too about Baker's time in Cleveland. Like, it just seems like he had a tendency to burn those bridges. Like, I will say until I'm blue in the face, I don't think Baker would have ever become what he ultimately became if he had stayed here. But like, those are the prime examples, right? The relationship with Myles, the relationship with Odell, the relationship with Kevin. As Mary Kay was talking, I was sitting here thinking about even with a guy like Duke Johnson, like when Baker made that comment when Duke was in his contract situation about you're on this train or you're off it. And then as soon as Baker tweets his notes app, farewell, I've requested a trade to Cleveland, Duke couldn't wait to hop on Twitter and post a gif of a train going off the tracks. Like, there just is something about Baker and how he maintains these relationships that leads to these sort of catastrophic and dramatic call-outs and endings, I think.
Well, who needs... Oh, go ahead.
And I'm just waiting for Johnny Manziel to weigh in on all of this.
Oh, my God.
I really want nothing else to say.
Who needs playoff games? The Browns offseason just never disappoints. We got coaches bowing out to go be OCs. We got, it's like I said, who needs playoff games?
Who, by the way, I mean, we have to, let's just bring it up. Let's just address it and then let's get out of it. But I mean, can we just acknowledge that Grant Udinski looks like Baker, looks like Johnny Manziel? I mean, let's just.
He does. Yeah. It's out there. It's on Twitter.
Just own it.
He does.
He just looks like him. And it's going to be post-traumatic stress disorder for me every day if he gets well. But he looks like
he'll change the narrative.
Yes, he will change the.
All right. Well, a lot going on here on a Tuesday night here on the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. Baker, if you do go back and read that story, there is a blue banner at the top of the page. You can become one of our Football Insider subscribers, cleveland.com/Browns. You can click on that. Find our YouTube, Cleveland Browns on cleveland.com. Yeah, go ahead, Mary Kay.
I think that he's going to read that story, and I think he's publicly going to issue an apology to me. Do you guys think so?
No.
I'm for you manifesting this, like speak it into existence. I don't think it's likely, but we can manifest this.
I mean, if he wants to come on the pod and apologize, he's welcome anytime.
Oh, that'd
send
be
him
good.
the link. Come on and apologize, Baker. We'll have you on.
Yeah.
Okay. That'll do it for this podcast. Like I said, find us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify too. Get subscribed there. For Mary Kay and Ashley, I'm Dan. Thanks for listening, everybody.